Let's start with something you're not prepared to hear, but it's too late now. You clicked. You're here and now, there's no turning back. Because what you're about to discover unearths truths that modernity has buried under tons of noise, posturing, and empty appearances. Have you ever wondered why everything feels more artificial? Why relationships no longer last? Why the word loyalty sounds archaic? Why emotional depth seems to have died in this era of filters, digital validation, and express love? Do you know what's most unsettling? That it's no accident, none of this is a mistake. It's the result of a selective evolution, but not a natural one, an evolution designed to weaken the essential. And do you know where it's most noticeable? In the figure of the woman. Yes, in how she has changed. In what has been lost, in what she used to be and no longer is. No, don't get me wrong. This isn't about romanticizing the past. It's not about nostalgia. It's about an uncomfortable truth you already sensed. Because even if you don't say it out loud, you feel it. Women of the past had something that's scarce now. A silent strength, a brutal capacity to hold without showing off, to love without asking, to endure without demanding recognition. They were rock and refuge. Today, everything moves by image, by immediate impact, by the desire to be seen rather than understood. Do you dare to look beyond the obvious, to tear through the polished surface of the present, and see what we have destroyed in the name of freedom? Because what we call progress may have been a more sophisticated form of decay. Here comes the hard part. You can't talk about this without something burning inside. Because we were taught that every change is good, that every evolution is progress. But Schopenhauer warned before anyone else, the feminine nature, when it strays from its essence, destabilizes the whole world. Not as punishment, but as an inevitable consequence. What if he was right? What if what we've called empowerment is, in many cases, total disconnection from depth, patience, real capacity for giving? It's not about superiority nor vulgar comparison. It's about an essence that has been blurred among empty promises and roles, imposed by a culture that applauds what shines and discards what nurtures. There's a question that haunts you even if you don't say it aloud. Why, if we have more freedom than ever, is there more emptiness than ever? Why, if everything is more accessible, has commitment become a relic? Why, if women can be whatever they want, do they seem increasingly lost, more anxious, more alone? No one will tell you this out loud, but you know it. Something broke. And it wasn't just in them, it was in everyone. Because when the feminine figure becomes corrupted, when she stops being a beacon and becomes a distorted reflection of the modern ego, the collective psyche wavers. Men and women drag themselves, emotionally searching for bonds that no longer exist because the foundations have been demolished. What's unsettling is not the change, it's the speed of change, the superficiality with which it's celebrated, and the collective amnesia that supports it. Women of the past weren't worth more because they were perfect. They were worth more because they were real, because they knew what it cost to hold a family, an emotion, a promise, because they were anchored to a truth deeper than the latest fashion trend. And now the criteria are volatile. Love is measured in views. Dignity is exchanged for digital approval. Patience is interpreted as weakness. And the darkest part of all is that no one seems willing to talk about it, because saying it betrays the modern dogma, because saying it threatens the official narrative. But someone had to say, this video isn't an ode to the past, it's an autopsy of the present. We're going to open this wound wide. We're going to touch where it hurts. And if you're not willing to rethink everything you thought you knew about female psychology, about bonds, about the real value of a woman, you better stop now, because what follows isn't designed to please. It's designed to awaken. We're going to go deep to the root. We're going to talk about the collapse of the feminine soul. And yes, we're going to do it from the truth no one wants to look at, because it's uncomfortable, because it's visceral, because it's real. And when you finish listening to this, you won't see the world the same way again. Have you ever wondered why uncomfortable silence has become the norm? Why you can no longer talk without someone feeling attacked, hurt, offended? Because we've changed the meaning of bond. Before, an emotional connection was a construction. Today, it's an exchange of validation. Before, two people united to endure the storm. Today, they separate if it rains. And it's not just ego nor lack of love, but a deep psychological change in the emotional role of the contemporary woman. Detachment is no longer protection. It's a facade. Coldness is no longer elegance. It's a shield. And independence, badly understood, has become an excuse not to share the emotional burden that a real bond implies. Schopenhauer sensed it. When the desire for freedom detaches from responsibility, the soul fragments. Women of the past knew something that's lost today. That true emotional strength isn't in pretending you don't need anyone, but in being able to give, hold, and receive without that destroying your center. Today, many have confused empowerment with emotional uprooting, and it's not their fault. The system made it that way. The culture, the narrative, the industry's social media, a whole arsenal designed to convince them that feeling deeply is a symptom of weakness, that showing tenderness is betraying yourself, that depending emotionally is regression. And here comes the hardest part. When every deep bond is interpreted as a threat to freedom, who is willing to truly love? And do you know what that produces in men? Disorientation, absolute confusion. Because a man doesn't know if he's with a woman or with a mask. He doesn't know if he's in a real bond or in a short-term emotional contract. He doesn't know if he can rely on her or if he's constantly being evaluated by an invisible checklist. The result is obvious: increasingly fragile bonds, increasingly repressed emotions, loneliness increasingly disguised as self-sufficiency, a generation of people who sleep accompanied but live alone. And that dissonance isn't free. It has a price, a very high one, but it doesn't end there. Because when the emotional collapses, the psychological becomes contaminated. Women of the past not only knew how to sustain relationships, they knew how to sustain themselves. They didn't need constant approval, nor likes, nor motivational quotes. They had something much more valuable, an inner compass. They knew who they were without depending on others' gaze. Today, that compass is broken in many. They move toward what shines, what's applauded, what's expected, and in that movement, they lose identity. And what has no identity cannot create roots. And without roots, everything collapses at the first wind. And you know what's darkest? That this transformation hasn't brought more happiness. It has brought anxiety, existential emptiness, endless comparisons. What's the use of having more freedom if that freedom leaves you every night with a screen as your only emotional refuge? What's the use of being able to choose anyone if you don't know how to hold anyone, nor let anyone hold you? We have created women who can conquer everything except inner peace, and that's where the real tragedy begins. The modern woman has become expert in external self-sufficiency, but increasingly clumsy in handling her inner world. There are more medicated women, more therapy sessions, more breakups, more searching for meaning, yet less emotional truth. They talk about self-love, but it's built on comparison. They talk about empowerment, but it's measured in likes. They talk about freedom, but live chained to what others think. And all that, like it or not, has a side effect. It has changed the kind of woman who appears in men's lives, and it has changed men too. It has stripped them of their place. It has turned them into secondary, mute actors in a play where they no longer know their role. Because if the woman stops being woman, the man no longer knows how to be man, not because he can't, but because the mirror has broken. It's not nostalgia, it's diagnosis. And the worst part is that you can't heal what you don't name. No one wants to talk about this because it's uncomfortable, because it's politically incorrect, because it touches nerves that make people uncomfortable. But someone has to say it. Women of the past were worth more, not because they were submissive, but because they were deep. Because they didn't empty themselves inside to shine outside. Because they knew true power isn't in dominating, but in connecting. Because they could destroy you with a word, but preferred to build you up with a look. Today, women have gained rights, spaces, presents, and that's fair, necessary. But they have lost something equally valuable. Their invisible power, their real magnetism, their capacity to transform without needing to impose, their ability to be the emotional center of the home, without ceasing to be themselves. And all that we have sacrificed in the name of false progress. A progress that screams freedom but produces loneliness. That proclaims autonomy but generates disconnection. That celebrates the superficial and annihilates the essential. And now what? Are we going to keep applauding the destruction of deep femininity just because it's uncomfortable to say it out loud? Or are we going to have the courage to look into the abyss and recognize that what has been lost was sacred? Because yes, it was authentic. Femininity is not measured in brute force, but in emotional containment, in the capacity for silence, in instinctive understanding, in that emotional intelligence that doesn't need to explain itself to be felt. Women of the past had that, and that's why they were worth more, because they didn't need to prove it, because their essence spoke for them. This is not an attack, it's a plea. It's the silent cry of a generation of men who no longer know how to approach without being rejected, judged, treated as dispensable. It's the echo of a masculinity that has lost its natural complement. And that complement wasn't a strong woman without a soul, nor a brilliant woman without tenderness. It was a whole woman, complete human flesh, bone and truth, not emotional plastic. We will continue because there is much more to say, and you won't like it, but it will be necessary, very necessary. And here we are, on the edge of the abyss. You've come this far, and that means one thing. Something inside you already knew this truth existed. Something inside you, no matter how buried under layers of modern noise, recognized the echo of what was once sacred. Because this isn't just about women. It's not just about men, it's about humanity. About the emotional essence we are letting die in exchange for speed, quick validation, a false autonomy that has only brought more anxiety and less meaning. Do you feel it? That subtle emptiness you can't fill with one more Instagram story, with another match that leads nowhere, with a cliché empowerment phrase that doesn't save you from insomnia. Women of the past were worth more, not because of nostalgia, but because of internal structure. Because they were built from silence, from resistance, from connection to something deeper than the ego. And that is not recovered by reading quotes on Pinterest. That is trained, revived, embodied. But to do it, you have to have courage. The courage to look opposite to the noise, to get off the train of anything goes, and seriously ask yourself, what am I building with the way I bond? What am I leaving behind out of fear to truly feel? What have I turned into normal that is actually disconnecting me from myself? And now, I want you to keep this. True value is not in how loudly you can shout what you are, but in how much you can hold your truth without needing to shout it. Women of the past didn't need to declare themselves valuable. They were because what is real doesn't need validation. It imposes itself, it's felt, it's respected in silence. And that today is lost amid so much noise. But if you've come this far, you can still return to that center. You can still rebuild from the essence, because there is no revolution more powerful than a woman who decides to be whole again, not perfect, but entire. And if you're a man, listen to this. Don't look for a perfect woman. Look for a woman who has made peace with her depth. One who doesn't need you to live, but chooses to share her soul with you. One who understands that true power is not in dominating you, but in inspiring you. Because if you find that you're not facing a partner, you're facing a miracle, and nowadays, miracles are scarce. So here's the deal. If this video stirred something in you, if it forced you to look where you didn't want to, if it awakened a corner of your mind you had silenced, subscribe, not for the algorithm, for you, because we will keep talking about what no one wants to touch. Because this wasn't a monologue, it was a mirror, and I want you to use it. And in the comments, leave this phrase. The truth is uncomfortable, but liberates. Don't put anything else. Just that. So I'll know you made it to the end. That you didn't close the tab when it started to hurt. That you didn't hide when the wound began to bleed. Because the truth when it stings is that it's alive, and now, yes, I'm leaving, not like the others. Not with a thanks for watching. I'm leaving you with a gap. A small, annoying, uncomfortable gap. Because that gap is proof that something inside you moved. And if it moved, you can no longer act like nothing happened. So decide. Are you going to cover it with noise again? Or are you going to listen to what's screaming inside you? See you in the next video, or not. That depends on how much you can stand to face what everyone wants to ignore. Until then, be brutally real.